You come home earlier than usual that day. It's one of those long, bone-draining shifts where every second crawls and every sound from the kitchen drills into your skull until you can't think straight. By the time you clock out, your body is aching, your shoes feel like they're cutting into your skin, and your back is screaming for mercy. Normally, you'd still be at work. Normally, you'd be chopping onions or wiping down counters, trying to keep pace with the never-ending flow of orders. But today you left a little earlier. Just a little. A rare gift to yourself. Maybe you'd sit with a cup of tea, maybe you'd nap. You weren't asking for much. But the second you reach your front door, something feels wrong. You pause. You tilt your head. Because it isn't silent. It isn't the quiet, predictable peace you expect when you walk into your home. Instead, you hear it. Voices. Clattering. The low hum of conversation, a laugh that doesn't belong to anyone you know. Your stomach tightens. Your heartbeat stutters. You grip the doorknob tighter. And then you do the one thing you'll regret and remember for the rest of your life. You push the door open. The sight stops you cold. Because standing in your kitchen, the kitchen you scrubbed clean last night, the kitchen you've poured your life into, are strangers. Not one. Not two. Several. Men in paint-smeared overalls. A woman unloading groceries from a bag. Someone stirring something on the stove. Someone else moving your chairs around. The smell hits you next. Garlic, onions, oil frying in a pan. It's not unpleasant, but it's wrong. It's foreign. This is the smell of strangers making themselves at home in a place that should have been yours and yours alone. Your first instinct is disbelief. You blink hard, rub your eyes, waiting for the picture to make sense. But it doesn't. Because they're moving around like they belong here. Like this is their kitchen. Like you're the one intruding. You hear yourself whisper, "What is this?" Your voice shakes. One of the strangers looks up, a young man, maybe mid-20s. He's got paint splattered across his face, his cap turned backward like he's working on some casual Saturday project. He doesn't even look guilty. He just smirks and says, "Oh hey, don't mind us. We were told we could stay here. We were told we could stay here." The words hang heavy. They don't make sense. They don't fit. Told by who? Stay where? Your head jerks toward the table, and that's when the real blow comes. Because there he is. Your son. Leaning back in your chair, arms crossed, grinning like he's watching the funniest prank on earth. And right beside him, your daughter-in-law. Legs crossed, eyes glued to her phone, scrolling with that smug look she gets when she thinks she's 2 steps ahead of everyone else. It feels like a punch to the chest. You've just dragged yourself through 12 hours of heat, sweat, and noise. You've burned your hands on pans too hot to touch, bent your back until you thought it would snap, stood until your feet were screaming. But none of that exhaustion compares to this. Walking into your own home and finding your son sitting there like a king while strangers tear your kitchen apart. He leans forward now, his grin widening. "Surprise, Mom." His tone is playful, like he's done something thoughtful. "We thought we'd get things started for you." You can barely find your voice. Started? Started what? And that's when she, the daughter-in-law, finally glances up from her phone. She smiles sweetly, too sweetly, the kind of smile that hides a knife. "Oh, Mama. You're home early. We're just making a few changes before we move in." Before we move in. It doesn't even sound real. You grip the counter because suddenly your legs feel too weak to hold you. You glance around the kitchen, hoping you're wrong. But no, you're not. Your floral curtains? Pulled down and shoved in a corner. Your neatly stacked spices, your little collection of bottles you saved for years? Pushed aside like they don't matter. Even your favorite mug, the one you reach for every morning, kicked to the side of the sink, chipped from where someone banged it against the counter. The strangers keep moving, unpacking, frying, chatting as though you aren't even there. As though this isn't your home at all. And then your son stands. His confidence fills the room. He's taller than you, broader, and he uses that to his advantage, walking toward you with that calm, practiced authority that used to make you proud and now makes you sick. "Mom, don't be upset," he says, like he's soothing a child. "This house is too big for just one person. We need more space. The kids are outgrowing our apartment. This makes sense for everyone." Your throat burns. Sense for everyone? What about me? He shrugs, easy, practiced. You'll still have your space. Don't worry. We've already talked to an architect. We'll divide the house in two. You get your half, we'll get ours. Like one big happy family. One big happy family. The phrase doesn't sound comforting. It sounds like theft. It sounds like being erased. The younger worker freezes when he catches your eyes. He looks like he wants to stop, like he knows this isn't right. He whispers to the older man, should we wait? But before you can even answer, your daughter-in-law waves a dismissive hand. No, no. Keep going. We already paid. Might as well finish today. Paid. And your stomach sinks. Because you know exactly where that money came from. Last month. The tears. The begging. The way they told you they couldn't make rent. That without you, the kids would be out on the street. That you were the only hope they had. And you gave it to them. Not because you had plenty, but because you'd saved. Because you'd spent years scrimping and scraping to have just enough put away for emergencies. You pulled from that because you couldn't stand the thought of your grandchildren suffering. And here it is. Not rent. Not survival. Paint. Furniture. Improvements. For your house. The rage rises in you like boiling water. You look at your son, your own flesh and blood, and you barely recognize him. His hand rests on your shoulder, but instead of comfort, it feels like possession. Mom, relax. It's just paint. We're all family. This will be good for everyone. Family. The word used like a weapon. Your daughter-in-law strolls over to your shelves, picks up one of your small trinkets, a cheap perfume bottle you've kept for years, and smirks. You don't need all this clutter, Mama. At your age, you should be simplifying. Simplifying. As if everything you've kept, everything you've worked for, was just junk. Your hands clench. Because this isn't just about paint, or curtains, or clutter. This is about the years. The decades. The sacrifices no one saw. The burns, the cuts, the double shifts. The way you stretched pennies into meals. The way you said no to yourself so you could say yes to others. And now, after all of it, you're being told you don't matter. That this isn't just your home anymore. That your voice, your choice, your dignity, none of it counts. The painters keep working, brushes slapping against walls, rollers squeaking, paint dripping onto the floor you scrubbed clean just yesterday. Your voice trembles when it finally bursts out. When did you decide this? Who gave you the right to take over my house? Your son steps back, sighs like you're being unreasonable. Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. And your daughter-in-law tilts her head, her voice soft, but sharp as glass. You'll see, Mama. Once everything's done, you'll thank us. White walls, new furniture, you'll love it. Trust me. But you don't trust her. You don't trust either of them. Because right now, staring at strangers working in your kitchen, smelling food you didn't cook on your stove, watching your own child grin at your pain, you realize you're standing on the edge of something far bigger than paint. This isn't a makeover. This is a takeover. And the life you thought you built, the home you thought was yours, is slipping through your fingers. But what those strangers told you next would shatter everything you thought you knew about your own life. If you think this could never happen in your family, subscribe now because stories like this prove otherwise. And if you still won't subscribe, at least comment why. I want to hear your reason. You stand frozen in that kitchen, strangers splattering paint and chopping onions like it's their right. Your son smirking. Your daughter-in-law giving orders. And in that moment, your mind drifts not because you want it to, but because it has to. Because to understand what's being stolen from you, you have to remember how hard you fought to earn it in the first place. You didn't stumble into this house. You bled for it. You've worked in food service since you were barely more than a teenager. First as a dishwasher, hands plunged into water so hot your skin cracked and peeled. Later as a line cook, then as prep, then as the invisible pair of hands everyone relied on but no one ever thanked. The kind of work where your name doesn't matter. You're just, hey you. Just the back of someone's head sweating over a grill. For decades, you lived in other people's kitchens. The roar of the exhaust fans in your ears, the sting of fryer grease popping against your arms, the endless tickets sliding down from servers who barely looked at you. You were always moving, always rushing, your back bent, your feet burning inside shoes that wore down to paper-thin soles long before you could afford to replace them. You remember the humiliation too. The chef shouting because a plate came out 2 minutes late. The customer who sent back soup for being lukewarm when you'd burned your tongue tasting it moments earlier. The way coworkers half your age looked at you like you were disposable, just an old pair of hands holding a knife. And still, you showed up. Every day. Through colds. Through blisters. Through the flu that left you shivering in a walk-in freezer as you chopped vegetables with trembling hands. Because missing a shift wasn't an option. Miss a shift and you lost hours. Lose hours and you lost pay. Lose pay and the rent slipped out of reach. Rent. That's where all your money went back then. Month after month, year after year, writing checks to landlords who raised the price whenever they pleased. Landlords who fixed nothing, who never painted, never cared if the pipes leaked or the windows jammed. You lived in places where walls were thin enough to hear arguments next door, where ceilings leaked brown water after every storm, where your dreams felt as cramped as the apartment itself. But even then, even in the middle of all that weariness, you were saving. Pennies. Nickels. Tips from holidays when other families were celebrating, but you were bent over a grill. You had your little hiding spots. A coffee tucked in the back of the closet. Bills folded into the hem of your Sunday dress, sewn there with careful stitches no one else knew about. Change dropped into a jar so often it became muscle memory, coins from your pocket straight into that jar, even when you desperately wanted to use them for something small, something silly, like a candy bar or a bus ride instead of walking. Every dollar had a story. The 20 you didn't spend on new shoes, even when the soles flapped. The 50 you saved by skipping dinners out while coworkers ordered takeout. The 100 you held on to by patching old clothes instead of buying new ones. It wasn't much at first, but it grew. Slowly, stubbornly, like a little flame you refused to let die. And all through those years you dreamed. Not of mansions. Not of grand staircases or granite countertops. Just of a place of your own. For walls that no landlord could take away. A kitchen where every pot, every spoon, every smell belonged to you. A front door that locked behind you and gave you peace. You can still remember the day you finally stepped into this house for the first time. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. The paint outside was chipped. The yard was more weeds than grass. The windows stuck, and the floors creaked. But to you, it was beautiful. Because when you walked into the kitchen, light poured through the window and landed on the counter like it was meant just for you. And you thought, this is it. This is where I'll finally be free. You remember the way your heart raced when you signed those papers. How your hands shook as you held the keys. How, for the first time in decades, you weren't just a renter handing money to someone else. You were an owner. The house wasn't big, but it was yours. That first night, you didn't even have furniture moved in yet. You spread a blanket on the floor in the living room and lay there in the quiet. No footsteps above you. No shouting through the walls. Just silence. Just peace. You stared at the ceiling until your eyes blurred, and you thought, after all these years, I finally did it. And oh, the kitchen. You treated it like a jewel. You painted it peach, not because it was fashionable, but because it reminded you of the sunsets you used to watch from your old apartment window, dreaming of better days. You found second-hand curtains at a flea market, stitched them yourself so they'd fit just right. Every dish, every pan, every piece of silverware, bought with money you'd sweated for, scrubbed for, burned your fingers for. This kitchen became more than a room. It became freedom. It became proof that sacrifice pays off. You'd come home from a grueling shift, your back aching, your hands raw, but the moment you stepped into this space, you could breathe. You'd boil pasta on your stove. You'd sit with tea at your table. You'd wipe down counters and smile, because the work was for you, not for some landlord, not for someone else's profit. And that's why this moment, this invasion, cuts so deep. Because they're not just painting walls. They're covering years of sweat, sacrifice, and dreams with strokes of entitlement. They're not just moving furniture. They're shoving aside your dignity. All the humiliation you endured in those kitchens, all the pennies you tucked away, all the nights you chose work over rest, all the years of silence, scrubbing grease until your body screamed, all of that lives in these walls. And now your son and his wife are erasing it with casual shrugs. That's why the smell of their food doesn't comfort you. It suffocates you. Because it doesn't belong here. Because this was the one place you carved out in a world that never gave you space, and now it's being stolen right in front of your eyes. You remember the Sunday markets, walking slowly through rows of old furniture, bargaining for a dresser you could sand and polish until it shone like new. You remember sewing your curtains late at night under the yellow glow of a lamp, humming softly to keep yourself awake, whispering, "This is mine, this is mine. This house is stitched with your blood, your sweat, your hope." And in a single afternoon, they're trying to claim it as theirs. That's why your chest feels heavy. That's why your voice shakes. That's why your hands ball into fists at your sides. Because this isn't just a house. This is you. Would you fight for your kitchen if it was the only place you ever called yours? Subscribe to Stories from Jovie so you never miss stories that remind us what's at stake. And if you won't subscribe, tell me in the comments, why not? You tell yourself it's just temporary. Just a little mess, a little disruption, something you'll fix tomorrow. But the truth is, tomorrow never comes because with every sunrise, something else is missing, something else is rearranged, something else no longer belongs to you. The first thing you notice is the kitchen cupboards. You open the door expecting to see your rows of neatly stacked canned goods, the spices you've collected one bottle at a time, the teas you keep for those rare quiet evenings. But what greets you is chaos. Bright cereal boxes that don't belong. Bags of potato chips spilling open. Soda bottles jammed sideways. Your cans of soup and beans, the staples you depend on, are shoved into a flimsy plastic bag and dumped on the counter. Your daughter-in-law greets you with a cheerful smile. "Look, Mama, we reorganized everything for you. It's so much better this way." Better? Better for who? For them. Always for them. You want to argue, but your throat tightens. And so, you just stand there, staring at cupboards that used to feel like your domain, cupboards that now mock you every time you open them. By the next afternoon, it isn't just the cupboards. It's the shelves in your living room. The little vase you polished until it gleamed? Gone. The clock that's ticked steadily through the years? Missing. Even the framed photo of you and your husband, the only picture you have of the two of you on that trip you never thought you could afford, packed into a box without a word. When you ask where your things are, she waves toward the garage. "Don't worry, Mama. Safe and sound. We're just decluttering. You don't need so much stuff." Decluttering. Simplifying. Words that sound harmless, but cut like knives. Because they're not simplifying your life, they're erasing it. That night, you walk through your house, and it doesn't feel like yours anymore. The walls are painted white, stripped of the warmth you chose. Your dresser is pushed into a corner like it doesn't matter. The kitchen hums with someone else's groceries, someone else's laughter, someone else's presence. And then comes the discovery that makes your knees buckle. You log into your savings account and freeze. The balance isn't what it was yesterday. Thousands gone. Money you spent years gathering, scraping, sacrificing. Money that represented every overtime shift, every blister, every burn scar on your hands. And when you confront your son, he barely flinches. "Relax, Mom. We used it for the house. For improvements. You'll see, it's an investment." An investment? For who? You stare at him in disbelief, but he pats your shoulder like you're a child who doesn't understand grown-up matters. "You'll thank us later." Later? You feel your chest burn. There is no later. That money was your safety net, your last line of defense. And now it's gone. The gaslighting starts soon after. Every protest you make, every time you try to claim your space, you're met with the same sharp replies. You're overreacting. You're too emotional. You don't understand how things work anymore. And the one that pierces deepest, at your age, you should be grateful someone wants to take care of you. Grateful. As if invasion is kindness. As if theft is love. Days pass and your home becomes unrecognizable. Your pots and pans are stacked in cabinets you can't reach. Your spices are replaced by brands you've never used. The coffee maker you treasured, the one luxury you allowed yourself, is gone, replaced by a complicated machine you don't even know how to turn on. And then, late one evening, you try to unlock your front door. The key doesn't fit right. It sticks. You twist harder, your palms sweating, until finally it clicks open. Too easily. That's when your stomach sinks. Someone has copied your keys. The proof comes 2 nights later. You're lying in bed when you hear laughter. Not your son's, not your daughter-in-law's, but strange voices, low and unfamiliar, drifting up from the kitchen. You creep into the hallway and see shadows flickering against the wall. Strangers. In your kitchen. Sitting at your table. Eating as if they belong. You retreat to your room, lock the door, and sit on the bed trembling. For the first time in your life, you feel like a stranger in your own home. By morning, you're desperate enough to call the police. You explain everything. The cupboards, the stolen money, the strangers at night. The officer who arrives barely hides his boredom. This sounds like a family dispute, ma'am. Civil matter. You'll need to handle it in court. A civil matter? You want to scream. Your home is being invaded, your life dismantled, and they call it civil. When the officer leaves, the house feels heavier. The message is clear. No one is coming to save you. That night, you can't sleep. Every creak in the floorboards jolts you upright. Every whisper of wind sounds like footsteps. You keep the light on, too afraid to face the dark. You walk the hallway at 2 a.m., checking doors, checking windows, hands trembling, body rigid. This house, the one you worked decades to claim, feels like a prison you can't escape. And still, it gets worse. Your son starts speaking to you with a new tone, sharp, dismissive, the way a landlord might talk to a tenant who's behind on rent. He makes decisions without consulting you. He tells you which room you should use. He laughs when you object. Your daughter-in-law is more insidious. She cloaks her cruelty in sweetness. Mama, you don't need so much stuff. At your age, less is more. She says it with a smile as she moves your things into boxes. You'll thank me later when life feels lighter. You don't feel lighter. You feel erased. One morning, you wake up to find the locks changed again. Not by you. By them. Your son is sitting in the living room, smirking. Don't worry, Mom. It's for your safety. In case you forget your keys. Forget? You haven't forgotten anything. But in his voice, you hear the accusation. You're old, you're weak, you're slipping. That night, you lie in bed, and for the first time, you wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe you are losing your mind. Maybe you're imagining things. Maybe you don't deserve this house after all. But then you hear it. The rattling of your doorknob. Once. Twice. Someone testing it. Someone trying to get in. You sit up, heart racing, and whisper to yourself, no, you are not crazy. This is real. The next day, you confront them. Your voice shakes, but you force the words out. This is my house. You don't get to decide what happens here. Your son laughs. Mom, stop embarrassing yourself. You should be glad we're here. Without us, you'd be lost. Your daughter-in-law adds, honestly, Mama, you should be thanking us. We've made this house so much better. Safer. Cleaner. More modern. And when we sell it, you'll see what a blessing it was that we stepped in. Sell it? The word lands like a knife in your gut. This isn't theirs to sell. It never was. But as they walk away, your hands tremble and a terrifying thought takes root. They've already taken your kitchen, your savings, your safety. What's next? That night, you hear footsteps in the hallway again. The sound of voices murmuring outside your door. The creak of the floorboards, the soft click of a lock being tested. And you realize with a chill that runs through your bones, your keys, your locks, your doors, none of it protects you anymore. Imagine coming home and realizing your own keys no longer protect you. Subscribe now, don't be the one left unprepared. If you refuse to subscribe, write in the comments why you take that risk. The night stretches on forever. You don't sleep. You can't. The house is too heavy with whispers and footsteps that don't belong to you. You lie on your bed staring at the ceiling, your fists clenched tight around your blanket. Every creak makes you flinch. Every shadow makes you think they're standing outside your door, waiting. But at some point, the fear turns into something sharper. You realize that if you do nothing, they'll take everything. Your home. Your peace. Even your sense of self. And that thought burns hotter than fear. So you plan. Quietly. Carefully. While the rest of the house sleeps, you move like a thief in your own home. You take out the old notebook you usually use for shopping lists and bills. Tonight, it becomes a record. A weapon. You write down every insult. Every time they dismissed your words. Every item they moved without asking. Every dollar that disappeared from your savings. You note the dates, the times, the way they looked at you when they said, "You should be grateful." Then you open the gallery on your phone. Dozens of photos you've been sneaking, each one proof. The cupboards filled with food that isn't yours. The dresser streaked with paint you never chose. The boxes of your things stacked in the garage like junk ready to be hauled away. You create a hidden folder and move them there. Label it receipts. Because that's what they are, receipts of everything they've stolen from you. You slip the notebook back into your drawer and tuck the phone under your pillow. Then you wait, listening. The television hum dies out. The muffled voices fade. A door closes. Finally, silence. You rise, heart pounding. Pull on your shoes. Grab your bag. Step out into the cool air of the pre-dawn morning. The street is still. The sky is bruised purple, the sun just beginning to tease the horizon. And for the first time in weeks, you feel something you thought you'd lost: purpose. At exactly 5, headlights wash over your porch. A truck pulls up, old and dented but reliable. The locksmith climbs out. An older man, hair thinning, eyes heavy from too many early mornings like this. He gives you a small nod, no questions asked. "Front door first," he says, already pulling out his tools. You nod, your throat too tight to answer. The sound of his drill is steady, almost comforting. Metal squeals as the old lock gives way. He pulls the cylinder free and drops it into your palm. Cold. Heavy. The same lock that betrayed you, that no longer kept you safe. You clench your fist around it like you're squeezing the fear out of your body. The new lock slides in easily. Fresh. Untouched. He tests it once, twice, then hands you a new key. Smooth edges. Clean cut. The first thing in weeks that feels truly yours. "Try it," he says. Your fingers shake as you slip the key in and turn. Click. Perfect. 1 lock down. 2 more to go. He moves to the back door, then the side gate. Each time, the drill whirs, the old lock falls, the new one clicks into place. With every turn of the key, you feel lighter, safer, stronger. By the time he finishes, he presses 3 sets of keys into your hand. 1 for you, 1 to hide, 1 spare if you trust anyone. Trust. You swallow hard. You're not sure that word belongs in your life anymore. Still, you nod. Thank you. He tips his cap and drives away, his taillights disappearing down the empty street. You stand on your porch, the keys clutched in your hand, and for the first time in weeks, you don't feel like a prisoner. You feel like the owner again. But peace doesn't last. By mid-afternoon, the quiet is shattered. Tires crunch against the gravel of your driveway. A car door slams. Voices rise. Then the pounding begins. "Mom, open the door." Your son's fist rattles the frame. Your daughter-in-law's voice cuts through next, high-pitched, furious. "This is ridiculous. You can't lock us out of our own home." Our home. The words sear through you. You grip your phone tighter. You've already called the police. You're not facing this alone. The pounding continues, louder, angrier. "Open up right now." You stand frozen in the hallway, your breath coming fast, until blue and red lights flicker through your window. A patrol car pulls up, and relief floods you. The officer who steps out is the same one who shrugged you off before, but this time, his posture is firmer. More alert. The doorbell rings. This time, you open it. Your son is there, face red with fury, veins standing out in his neck. His wife beside him, arms crossed, eyes glittering like she's already won. But before they can speak, the officer raises a hand. "Let's keep this civil." "Ma'am, are you the homeowner?" You nod and hand him the folder you prepared, the deed, the identification, everything in your name. He flips through the papers, nods, and turns to your son. "Sir, this property belongs to her. Do you have a rental agreement?" Your son stammers. "She invited us. We live here." She can't just. The officer cuts him off. Without a rental contract, you have no legal right to stay. Your daughter-in-law lunges forward, her voice sharp as glass. "But our things are inside. She can't just keep them from us." The officer's voice is calm, practiced. "You'll be allowed to collect your belongings under my supervision. But once they're out, you don't come back unless invited. Is that clear?" The next hour feels unreal. You stand on your porch as they carry out their possessions one by one. The oversized television they wedged into your living room. The fancy coffee machine you never touched. The suitcases full of clothes you didn't buy. Even the bedroom furniture they claimed was for you. Each item feels like a piece of their arrogance being stripped away. At one point, your daughter-in-law tries to lift a box you know holds your linens. You step forward, your voice steady for the first time in weeks. That stays. She glares at you, her lips curling, but the officer backs you up. Leave it. She drops the box with a thud. Your son tries a different tactic. He moves slowly, dragging his feet, lingering in doorways like he's memorizing the place. At one point, he leans close, his breath hot against your ear. This isn't over, Mom. Don't get comfortable. You don't flinch. Not this time. Finally, the last suitcase is hauled out. The officer does a final walkthrough, then nods at you. All clear. It's yours again. You whisper thank you, your voice thick, your chest heavy. When the patrol car leaves, the silence that follows is absolute. You step back inside. The cupboards are still filled with their food. The walls are still scarred with paint. Your plants are still shoved into corners. But the air is different. Lighter. Yours. You walk slowly through each room, fingers trailing over the walls. The white paint still stings your eyes, but even so, you feel it, the house is yours again. Every new lock, every key in your pocket is proof that you fought back. That night, you brew coffee in your battered old pot. Sit at your table, the one that has seen every triumph and every defeat of your life. The house is quiet, but not the heavy silence of fear. It's the fragile peace of victory. You sip slowly, letting the warmth spread through you. For a brief, precious moment, you allow yourself to believe it's over, that the war has been won. But as you carry your cup to the sink, you remember the words your son whispered on the porch. This isn't over. And you know he meant it. She thought it was over, but the real war hadn't even started. Subscribe so you're here when the next twist drops. If you don't subscribe, at least comment. What's stopping you? Pride? Doubt? The morning starts out too quiet. Almost too peaceful. You sit at your kitchen table, clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee, staring at the new locks on your doors. You should feel victorious. Last night, you finally breathed. Last night, you dared to believe the house was yours again. But when the knock comes, it's not the knock of a neighbor. Not the friendly rhythm of someone dropping by. It's sharp. Rhythmic. Authority in every pound. Police. Open up. The sound shoots through you like lightning. Your hand jerks, spilling coffee across the table. You freeze, heart hammering, before forcing yourself toward the door. Through the peephole, you see two uniformed officers. Their faces unreadable, their stance rigid. One of them holds a folded document. Behind them, there they are. Your son and his wife. Standing tall, their chins lifted, their eyes full of smug triumph. When you open the door, the taller officer speaks. His tone clipped, rehearsed. Ma'am, we have a search warrant. Your blood runs cold. A warrant? For what? The officer unfolds the paper, his eyes scanning it before reading aloud. We've received complaints alleging unlawful possession of property. Claims of withheld belongings, furniture, documents, and cash. You step back, shaking your head. That's not true. This is my home. But the officer continues, businesslike. We are authorized to enter and search. And just like that, the victory of yesterday vanishes. They move through your home in a wave, flashlights cutting across walls, drawers rattling, cupboards banging open. Every slam echoes like an accusation. They pull out boxes, shuffle through closets, open the drawers you thought were safe. Behind them, your son and daughter-in-law hover like vultures. Their faces smug, their voices low but cutting. She hides things, your daughter-in-law says sweetly. Check the bedroom. She's paranoid. She doesn't trust anyone. Your son adds, she probably doesn't even remember where she put half the stuff. That's why we had to step in. One officer pauses by the bookshelf, lifting a frame. The photo of you and your late husband, smiling on that first night you moved in. You feel a lump rise in your throat. This isn't just a search, it's a violation. And then comes the folder. Your daughter-in-law steps forward, clutching it like a weapon. She lays it out on the table, opening it with a practiced flick. Inside are sheets of paper, crisp and clean, ready to destroy you. Here's the proof, she says, her voice honey-sweet. Receipts for the furniture we bought. Screenshots of texts where she begged us to move in. Evidence she invited us. The officer takes the pages, scanning. He frowns, then reads aloud. This house is too big for me. Please come stay. I need help. Signed from your number, Mrs. Jones. Care to explain? Your legs go weak. You grip the counter to stay upright. I never sent that. I never wrote that in my life. But your son steps in, sighing heavily, shaking his head as if it hurts him to speak. Mom, you probably don't even remember. The stress, the age, it's catching up with you. You've been confused lately. You repeat yourself. You forget things. It scares us. He looks at the officers, his voice full of fake pity. We just want to protect her. But she doesn't know what's best anymore. And just like that, the script flips. You are no longer the victim. You are the unreliable narrator in your own life. The officers exchange a glance. One of them mutters, mental decline. We see this sometimes. You want to scream. Instead, your voice cracks. That's not true. I remember everything. I worked for this house. I bled for it. Look, you rushed to your bedroom, yanking open the drawer, pulling out your folder, the deed, the IDs, everything with your name etched into it. You thrust it forward. This proves it's mine. All of it. Mine alone. The taller officer flips through, nodding slowly. But your daughter-in-law is quick, her tongue sharp. Yes, the deed is in her name. But what about the improvements we paid for? The money we invested? She doesn't want to admit it, but she depends on us. And honestly, officer, she called my husband 3 times last week asking the same question. She's slipping. She's paranoid. Her words drip like poison. The officers hesitate. Doubt lingers in their eyes. And in that hesitation, you feel your world crumble. You picture yourself dragged from your home, declared incompetent, stripped of everything you've built. The humiliation of it burns. The injustice suffocates. And then salvation. Your phone buzzes on the counter. It's Vincent. Your neighbor. I heard police are at your door. Hold tight. I'm coming and I'm bringing help. Minutes later, headlights flare outside. Vincent strides in, steady as a rock. Beside him, a man in a crisp suit, briefcase in hand. A lawyer. The air shifts the moment they enter. The lawyer greets the officers, flashes credentials, and calmly requests to see the so-called evidence. He lays the papers flat, adjusts his glasses, and begins dissecting them piece by piece. This receipt, he says, tapping the page, claims to be from 2018. But this watermark? It wasn't used until 2021. Forged. He flips to another. This purchase date doesn't match the store's records. See the barcode? It's a duplicate. Fraud. Then, the texts. He holds them up to the light. Notice the spacing between the timestamps. No phone logs messages like this. This was generated by an app. An amateur job, frankly. The officers lean closer, their expressions hardening. One of them mutters, he's right. The formatting's off. The lawyer closes the folder with a snap. His voice turns sharp. What you have here is fabricated evidence. Fraudulent material submitted to law enforcement. That's a criminal offense. If you press further, you'll be looking at obstruction charges. Silence. The smugness drains from your son's face. Your daughter-in-law pales, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The officer straightens, his tone suddenly firmer. Sir, ma'am, consider this your warning. If you set foot on this property again without permission, you'll be arrested for trespassing. And if we see more fabricated evidence, you'll face charges. Do you understand? Your son clenches his jaw but nods. Your daughter-in-law mutters, this isn't fair, but the fight is gone from her voice. The officers hand back your documents, the deed, the IDs, solid proof that you're not weak, not delusional, not lost. You're the owner. The truth is yours again. They leave, and the door closes with a final click. The house is quiet. Too quiet. You stand in the hallway, your hands trembling. Relief floods you, but it's tangled with something else, exhaustion. You defended yourself. You survived. But you know in your gut, this battle is only one chapter. Because as your son turned to leave, his eyes locked with yours. Cold. Unforgiving. His voice low enough for only you to hear. This isn't over, Mom. And you know he meant it. Most people never see betrayal until it's too late. Subscribe to Stories from Jovie so you're not blindsided when truth is twisted. And if you still won't subscribe, comment why. Let the whole community know. The day after the search warrant, you make a decision. No more waiting for the next knock, no more hoping things will calm down. You've seen what they're capable of. Lies. Forgery. Twisting the truth until it nearly crushed you. If you want peace, you'll have to claim it yourself. You take your deed, your photos, your notebook, and meet with the lawyer Vincent brought to your side. He listens, calm but firm, jotting notes as you tell him everything. When you finish, he slides the papers back across the desk. We're filing for a restraining order, he says. They won't be able to come near you, this property, or contact you again. Not legally. The relief is immediate, though it comes with a weight of sadness too. These are your own blood. But blood doesn't excuse betrayal. And safety matters more than sentiment. Within days, the paperwork is filed. You stand in front of a judge, your voice shaking but steady enough to tell the truth. You hand over your receipts, your photos, your testimony. The lawyer speaks with authority, pointing out every forgery, every manipulation. Your son and daughter-in-law squirm in their seats, their confidence finally cracked. When the order is granted, you breathe deeper than you have in months. The house is yours. Legally. Finally. Untouchably. That night, you return home. You step into the kitchen, flick the light on, and let the silence wash over you. No voices mocking from the other room. No footsteps creeping down the hall. No whispers at midnight. Just silence. Your silence. You pour yourself a cup of coffee and sit at the table that has held you through every storm. You look at the cupboards, still cluttered with their leftover groceries, but this time, you don't see invasion. You see proof of what you survived. Tomorrow you'll clean them out. Tomorrow you'll reclaim every shelf. For now, you just sit. The steam rises from your cup. The chair creaks beneath you. And you feel something you thought you'd lost: serenity. You whisper to yourself, half aloud, chosen solitude is better than toxic company. Because you've learned the difference. Loneliness is heavy when it's forced on you. But solitude, chosen, embraced, savored, that's freedom. You glance toward the window, where the first light of dawn pushes against the curtains. And you think of the people who stood by you. Vincent, who didn't hesitate to show up when it mattered. The lawyer who cut through lies with precision. The officer who finally listened. You realize that, even in the darkest moments, you were not completely alone. And gratitude warms you from the inside. You take another sip and close your eyes. For weeks, this house felt like a battlefield. But now, with the locks changed, the lies exposed, the restraining order signed, it feels like home again. You're home. And maybe the scars won't vanish. Maybe the paint they slapped on your dresser will always remind you of their arrogance. Maybe the missing savings will never be replaced. But scars are proof of survival. They're the marks left behind when you win. You rise from the table and walk through each room slowly. The living room, stripped bare where their oversized television once stood. The hallway, quiet without their arguments echoing. Your bedroom, still holding the dresser they ruined but glowing faintly in the morning light. And the kitchen, the heart of your fight, the soul of your survival. Every room whispers the same truth. You fought back. You did not surrender. And as you stand in your kitchen, the smell of coffee lingering in the air, the silence humming like a song, you know that this house isn't just wood and nails. It's a promise. A reminder that what you worked for, what you bled for, is worth defending. This was just one of the many untold battles happening behind closed doors. Subscribe to Stories from Jovie to stand with people who refuse to be erased. And if you won't subscribe, at least tell us in the comments, why turn away from real stories like this?